The reciprocal tariffs by the Trump administration are now in effect as of Thursday, 1 p.m. here in South Korea. On top of that, President Donald Trump says the U.S. will slap 100% tariffs on computer chips unless they're produced in the U.S. And as Wednesday's announcement left related firms like Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix on edge, the South Korean government reassures the local chip industry that South Korea will be treated as a most favored nation as promised. South Korea logged its largest ever current account surplus in June thanks to strong exports. The Trump administration's reciprocal tariffs have taken effect as of Thursday midnight Eastern Time in the U.S. and at 1 p.m. here in Seoul. The duties range from 10 to 41% depending on the country. Now, South Korea, Japan, and the European Union all face 15% tariffs on goods exported to the U.S. Seoul sealed a deal with Washington last week in return for the country's commitment to a $350 billion investment package. And Trump's attempts to reshape the global trade order are far from over. He's now warning to dump 100% tariffs on chips coming into his country. Yoon Jung-min reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump continues to ratchet up his tariff pressure, this time threatening to impose a 100% tariff on semiconductors coming into the United States.
We're going to be putting a very large tariff on chips and semiconductors. But the good news for companies like Apple is if you're building in the United States or have committed to build, without question committed to build in the United States, there will be no charge.
He was speaking at a White House event on Wednesday, where Apple promised to invest an additional $100 billion in the U.S., on top of the previously announced $500 billion. No specifics were given, though Trump did earlier signal that the levies on chips could come as soon as next week. With semiconductors being South Korea's second largest item exported to the U.S., Seoul's top office echoed remarks by Trade Minister Gu that the country will not be treated less favorably than other nations.
Whether the levies be 100% or 200%, we have been promised the most favored nation status with regard to semiconductors and pharmaceuticals.
Last week, a framework trade deal was reached between Seoul and Washington that lowered the U.S. so-called reciprocal tariffs on South Korea to 15% in exchange for massive investment pledges by Seoul, as well as a promise for the most favored nation status on certain sector-specific tariffs. What lies ahead is how to fill in the details of the deal in time for the face-to-face meeting later this month at the top level involving President Lee Jae-myung and his U.S. counterpart, Donald Trump. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Now, despite government reassurances, concerns over the possibility of not being granted an exemption from the extra tariffs plan are spilling over to the local chip industry. Our Kim Bo-kyung has this report.
U.S. President Donald Trump's recent plan to impose tariffs on imported chips is putting South Korean manufacturers on edge. Semiconductors represent Seoul's second-largest export to the U.S. following vehicles, with shipments totaling more than $10 billion, around 14.7 trillion Korean won last year. This accounts for a little more than 7% of the country's overall exports to the U.S. Although it seems small compared to Korea's exports to China or Hong Kong, it cannot be overlooked as a considerable amount of semiconductors are exported to the U.S. indirectly after being assembled or processed in countries such as Taiwan. When it comes to South Korean chip makers, Samsung Electronics is producing non-memory chips at its Austin plant in Texas and constructing a foundry in Taylor of the same state, while SK Hynix is to build a high-bandwidth memory packaging plant in Indiana. If Trump does acknowledge such investments already made, it is likely these chip makers would be exempted. However, if they become subject to the tariffs, they would suffer a substantial hit as most memory chips, DRAM and NAND, are being produced within the country as well as in China. Samsung produces memory chips in South Korea's Hwaseong, Pyeongtaek, and Xi'an in China, while SK hynix is producing them in South Korea's Icheon and Cheongju and China's Wuxi and Dalian. Concerns are mounting, but one expert says it is unlikely the tariffs plan will be able to go as Trump said, as it could hurt industries and consumers in the U.S. as well.
The U.S. right now is investing substantially in AI and data centers, so their demand for semiconductors are very high. And if these companies cannot buy foreign-made semiconductors, these AI and data centers may not be built, or their costs will go up substantially. So it will hurt not only American consumers and the IT industries, but they may fall behind in the AI race with China.
Meanwhile, Samsung Electronics shares closed at 70,500 Korean won on Thursday, up 2.47% following the news that Samsung would manufacture Apple's next-generation chips at its foundry plant in Texas. While SK hynix rebounded during the day and closed at 262,000 Korean won after having dropped sharply early due to tariff concerns. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
South Korea has posted its largest monthly current account surplus on record, thanks to chips, pharmaceuticals, and dividend income. The news also came as the Deputy Prime Minister for Economy and Finance visited the Bank of Korea for the first time. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
South Korea posted a current account surplus of $14.27 billion in June, the country's largest monthly surplus on record. According to the Bank of Korea on Thursday, the figure was fueled by strong semiconductor exports and a surge in dividend income. June also marked a surplus for the 26th consecutive month. Compared to May, the goods account surplus alone rose by $2.5 billion, helping push the first half total to $49.37 billion, the third highest first half figure in history.
This is the result of a sharp increase in the primary income account, driven mainly by dividend income, on top of a wider goods surplus due to a drop in commodity imports following lower oil prices.
In June, exports of semiconductors rose over 11%, while pharmaceutical shipments soared more than 50%. Much of the chip sales appear to have been front-loaded ahead of the U.S. tariffs taking effect. However, steel and automobile exports slipped, reflecting early pressure from the new tariff regime. Regionally, exports to the U.S. and China declined, while shipments to the EU and Southeast Asia posted solid gains. Despite concerns for other items due to tariffs, the Bank of Korea maintained a positive outlook for the current account in the near term.
As for semiconductors and pharmaceuticals, South Korea secured the most favorable terms under the agreement. So we're not likely to face disadvantages compared to other countries, nor see a significant drop in the competitiveness of our chip industry.
The news also came as the Deputy Prime Minister for Economy and Finance, Koo Yoon-chol, visited the Governor of the Bank of Korea, Lee Chang-yong, for the first time. Greeting the Deputy Prime Minister, the general touted the government's tariff deal with the U.S., saying it eased the burden for the central bank as well.
To be honest, from both my personal view and the Bank of Korea's perspective, the recent tariff agreement was handled well, and it has significantly eased the pressure going into our monetary policy meeting at the end of August.
The Deputy Prime Minister also said the decline in potential growth rate is due to a loss in the country's economic capability, adding, all economic players must work together to strengthen that capability. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
And the country's domestic consumption is starting to recover steadily, despite some concerns about economic uncertainty. Our Park Gon-woo has the details.
Steady signs of recovery in domestic consumption are becoming a reality in South Korea. That's according to the first economic ministerial meeting under the new Lee Jae-myung administration on Thursday.
After a long slump, consumption is starting to recover. Domestic demand is revitalizing thanks to efforts such as the livelihood recovery consumption coupons. Retail sales have turned upward for the first time in 4 months, and consumer sentiment is at its highest in over 4 years.
KU also pledged to hold a series of large-scale consumption-boosting events each month until the end of the year, aiming to sustain the momentum. And to help non-capital regions struggling with challenges such as shrinking populations, the government plans to match them with entities, including central ministries under a sisterhood program, to promote tourism and local specialties. On Thursday, the state-run Korea Development Institute also echoed the positive signs in consumption in its August Economic Trends Report. It showed that consumption is partially improving, backed by declining interest rates, despite ongoing sluggishness in production, particularly in the construction sector. KDI also projected a more positive outlook thanks to consumption coupons distributed last month. However, the think tank also raised concerns of trade uncertainties linked to U.S. tariffs. While July's exports increased year-on-year, the state-run think tank attributed the rise to front-loaded shipments from markets including Taiwan and ASEAN ahead of new U.S. tariffs. Also on Thursday, Finance Minister KU said the government will focus on a strategic transition toward a hyper-innovation economy, driven by rapidly evolving technologies. He said key sectors including AI will receive concentrated support to produce visible results in a short time. More specific strategies are set to be unveiled later this month. 박건우, 아리랑 뉴스.
Here in South Korea, the number of shops that operate without any shopping assistance has dramatically increased since the early 2020s. Started as a new way to buy products without physical contact, the sector and business models are diversifying to meet the evolving needs of consumers. For more, we turn to our business correspondent, Park Junan. Welcome back, Junan.
Thank you for having me, Dami.
So, Junan, about these unmanned stores, what are they in detail and what sectors do they really cover?
Right, Tammy. So just yesterday, I visited 3 shops that sold ice cream, fresh food, and pet supplies. What stood out was that they were fully operating without a shop assistant present. All I had to do was simply pick up the item, bring it to the counter, and scan the barcode. After scanning, I inserted my card, and the payment went through successfully. The types of unmanned stores I mentioned earlier are just the tip of the iceberg. Various sectors, industries that we could expect have embraced unmanned operations and are now seamlessly integrated into our daily lives. According to a survey by a credit card company here, the most common types of unmanned stores include ice cream shops, laundry shops, photo booths, study cafes, and packaged meal stores. Although estimates vary by institution, it is generally assumed that there are over 10,000 unmanned stores in the country now. From January 2020 through 2025, the number of unmanned stores grew 314%. It increased more than 4-fold from 2020 to 2023 and has remained steady for the last 2 years. Also, because unmanned stores have lower operating costs than traditional ones with fixed expenses, younger people are increasingly involved in starting unmanned businesses. Data shows that 30% of unmanned store owners are in their 20s or 30s, nearly double the 16% seen among owners of traditional stores.
Junan, I do have to say I go to these unmanned stores quite often, especially ice cream shops. Now, I heard that it's gaining more popularity, but what's behind that popularity, really?
That's right, Tammy. For customers, the main reasons they visit unmanned stores are for their accessibility and reasonable prices.
Right.
Let's take a listen to what customers of an unmanned ice cream shop had to say about their shopping experience.
It's cheaper than convenience stores, and I like that I can pay on my own without waiting.
Since it's open 24 hours, I can stop by any time after studying near my academy, which I find really convenient.
A professor who focuses on consumer economics and policy said it's a win-win situation for store owners and customers.
Labor costs are rising, and consumers are not in a financially comfortable situation, so they tend to look for more cost-effective products. As businesses aim to reduce fixed costs and consumers have become more accustomed to contactless services, they are less resistant to technology. And these two factors seem to have created a synergy.
So affordability, accessibility, and convenience, these are the reasons why consumers go to these unmanned stores. Now, what aspects of Korean consumer culture can we observe through this new trend?
Right, Tammy. These unmanned businesses can only operate based on trust. From both the store owners and experts' perspectives, they say theft is rare, and this mutual trust between customers and sellers is often seen as a key driver behind the growth of unmanned businesses. Let's take a listen to what the owner of an unmanned ice cream store and a professor of consumer policy had to say about this.
The CCTV is running, and in most cases, people act honestly. Of course, there are occasional mistakes during checkout, but they're usually unintentional. Overall, people are very conscientious.
In Korea, there's a strong sense of ethics, even in coffee shops and other public places. People don't steal personal belongings, which foreigners definitely see as a positive aspect.
So sense of trust and ethics, notably, prominent here in South Korea. Now, these unmanned stores are really convenient and, they are amazing, but I'm sure they're not perfect at times. What are the prospects of these unmanned stores in Korea?
Yes, Tammy. So an expert told me that this new consumer trend involving unmanned stores is a result of combined factors: technological advancement, efforts to reduce fixed labor costs, and a shrinking workforce due to low birth rates. While she said there's no immediate concern, the professor added that if larger corporations begin entering the unmanned store businesses, it could eventually impact the job market. Let's take a listen to what she said.
If unmanned stores are operated by large franchises or spread to large stores, there is clearly a possibility that this could affect employment in South Korea.
With lower operating costs, growing public trust, and consumers adapting to new technologies that change how we shop, unmanned stores may offer an early glimpse of what future retail markets will look like in the years to come.
Indeed, Junad, thank you so much for the interesting report tonight.
Thank you, Dami. It was a pleasure.
The special counsel team looking into the actions of former First Lady Kim Gun-hee requested an arrest warrant with a detention for her today, a day after questioning Kim over a series of allegations made against her. The team announced that it filed a request to the Seoul Central District Court at 1:21 p.m. Reportedly, the request was made on the grounds that Kim had denied all the accusations and posed a risk of evidence tampering. The special counsel is investigating Kim on 16 charges, including stock manipulation and election interference. Also, earlier in the day, the team made a second attempt to bring in her husband, former President Yoon Suk-yeol, for questioning. However, the effort was halted due to his firm refusal and concerns over possible injury. In other news, from groundbreaking new panels to the latest in automotive displays, you can explore the future technology at K-Display 2025. Our Moon Ji-young brings you all the highlights from this year's cutting-edge exhibition.
A glimpse of South Korea's latest display technologies. The 24th edition of the Korea Display Exhibition, dubbed K-Display 2025, kicked off in Seoul on Thursday. At this internationally certified exhibition, domestic panel companies leading the OLED sector, along with a large number of domestic and international materials, parts, and equipment companies gathered to showcase the future direction of display technology. LG Display, an industry giant, unveiled its cutting-edge fourth-generation OLED TV panel. This panel stands out with an industry-first technology that independently stacks the three primary colors of light, pushing the boundaries with a stunning peak brightness of 4,000 nits. The company further showcased for the first time the world's fastest OLED monitor panel, which boasts an unparalleled refresh rate. LG Display is also highlighting its automotive display, which spans the entire width of the car in front of both the passengers and the driver's seats. This pillar-to-pillar display is poised to be the first of its kind to enter mass production in the industry.
Another industry titan, Samsung Display, has taken the lead with its ultra-fine OLED on silicon, or OLEDOS products for XR devices, showcasing the expansive possibilities of ultra-high-resolution XR technology. The company also unveiled a groundbreaking 6,000 nit micro-LED for next-generation smartwatches. This is a significant leap, 2,000 nits brighter than the 4,000 nit watch micro-LED that Samsung Display showcased at CES 2025 just 6 months ago. All these display technologies are being showcased until Saturday in Seoul. More than 140 companies are participating in this year's event, which has attracted approximately 20,000 visitors. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy said the government will continue to provide policy support, including R&D investment and strengthening the competitiveness of the materials, parts, and equipment industry. 문지영, 아리랑 뉴스.
South Korean football star Heung-min will now officially play for LAFC over the next 2 years, with the goal of leaving the club as a legend. Our Choi Soo-hyung tells us more.
At Heung-min's official Los Angeles FC signing press conference, LAFC supporters welcomed him with loud and powerful cheers. After 10 years with Tottenham Hotspur, Son officially joined LAFC on Wednesday local time. His new club described the South Korean national team captain as one of the most talented and popular Asian players in football history, while Tottenham bid farewell with a front-page message on its website. Heung-min says he came to Los Angeles with one goal: to win.
Obviously, I'm here to perform, but also that I want to give some advice to the young players that for improvement. So yeah, I can't just wait to see all the teammates and all the players that are working together. So that's why we are here. So let's do it together, wins the trophy.
It was also revealed that Sonny will wear the number 7 at his new club. Now set to play as LAFC's starting forward, Son said the presence of the world's largest Koreatown in Los Angeles was one reason he chose the team. LAFC said Heung-min was signed as a designated player, exempt for the MLS salary cap through 2027, with an option to extend until June 2029. The club added that he will take up an international roster slot and will be eligible to play once he secures a U.S. work visa and an international transfer certificate. According to ESPN, LAFC is paying a transfer fee of around $26 million, setting a new Major League Soccer record and surpassing the previous record of $22 million set by Atlanta United when they signed Emmanuel Latte-Lath earlier this year. Son also becomes one of the highest-paid players in the MLS. Son is embracing his new start in the U.S. as another challenge, saying he wants to give back for everything he has received from the team and hopes to leave as a club legend. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
The heat continues today, the season of Ipchu, which means the beginning of autumn on the traditional calendar. However, it is still hot across the country. With a heat wave advisories in place in 71 southern regions, the daytime temperatures reached 32 degrees in Seoul, Chuncheon, and Cheongju today. There will be no heat wave above 35 degrees Celsius like last week, but daytime temperature will continue to exceed 30 degrees Celsius in most regions for the time being. Meanwhile, the night heat will gradually start to cool as well. Seoul will see lows of 23 degrees tomorrow, and many areas will see below 25 degrees in the morning. Daejeon, Gwangju, and Daegu will start off at 22 degrees, Busan at 25 degrees. Highs move up to 31 degrees in Seoul, Chuncheon, Daejeon, and Busan, Jeju 30 degrees. Showers are forecast tomorrow on the East Coast. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. For all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.